Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Mike Carlson,
I'm Brian Heisenberg.
and this is your view from the U. Brian, great week of college football. A very ho-hum week, I might add, too, with the exception of a couple of teams. Not a lot of upsets quite yet, but, that could change very quickly.
Yeah, and Mike, you have your quarterback of the year, of course. We all know him, Everett Golson. But, of course, I am a Big Ten man myself. Of course, while other people were raised watching SpongeBob give Squidward the business, I was raised watching Joe Paterno and his crew give Northwestern the business. So, of course, my quarterback of the year is a Big Ten quarterback from right here, Penn State, Christian Hackenberg. I love this guy. Of course, I'm a big fan of James Franklin. I followed him at Vanderbilt last year. I think he's a fantastic coach, fantastic step in the right direction for this program. And this quarterback, Christian Hackenberg, he's just doing so well. 3 games, he's already hit the 1,000 pass yards mark. His passer rating is above 100. He's doing well. He needs to cut down on the interceptions a little bit as league play comes in. And, they had a tight game against Rutgers, which they probably shouldn't have had. But, this guy, he's looking really strong. I'm liking him. And if he puts up another performance like he did in one of the first 3 games in his next game against UMass this week, he's already halfway to his career highest passing yards in a season.
I definitely like Christian Hackenberg, Brian. He's a quarterback. He runs a very, pro-style offense with James Franklin. Very good quarterback. He's going to make good throws, going to stay in the pocket, deliver a lot of great passes. This guy, he's been rising up my charts too. I've slowly taken notice of him over the last couple of weeks. And you talk about Penn State, all the, allegations, all the, the sanction that they had. I think Hackenberg's the perfect guy to transition them into the post, sanction, post-Joe Paterno years. Hackenberg's a great quarterback. I love the future this guy has in front of him.
Yeah, it's great to have such a great passer at Penn State because looking at their stats just a minute ago, their leading rusher doesn't even have 100 yards yet on the team. These are a pass-based team, sort of like Clemson. But while I criticize Clemson, it's because they don't have the ability to get around that. Christian Hackenberg, such a talented guy. He's making those throws. He's getting those touchdowns. And if he gets rid of those interceptions, like I said, we're looking at a potential best quarterback in the Big Ten and Penn State potentially being a Big Ten champion.
Definitely. I think Penn State with Hackenberg at the helm will be a Big Ten champion. And, Braxton Miller's out, so right now it's anyone's game for the quarterback of the Big Ten. But, Brian, we've got to move on from one quarterback to another, our rising and falling stocks. We got a pair of quarterbacks and a university so far on the list. So let's start with Blake Sims. Sims did have the majority of the timeshare between him and his counterpart, Mr. Coker, and Alabama's win this week. Brian, I'm a fan of both of these quarterbacks, but Blake Sims right now clearly has the edge.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely a trend you can see when, the person behind you doesn't even have 10 passes. So this guy, you got 2 touchdowns, solid win for Alabama. Southern Miss ain't a big rival that they have, not too much of a threat to the University of Alabama. But it does show in these games when you're getting more reps in these sort of easy games, it does show that Nick Saban is kind of leaning that way.
And I think if you're Nick Saban, I think you just have to, take Mr. Coker off of life support here and just make Sims the quarterback, make Sims the guy at Alabama. He's been A.J. McCarron's understudy for a number of years. I think Blake Sims right now is the guy for Alabama. He's the hot hand, and you got to go with the hot hand at quarterback.
Let's move it to a different red. In the Big 12, Trevor Knight, let's talk about this guy. You were praising him going to the end of last season. A lot of expectation for Oklahoma to be one of the 4 teams in the playoff. And this guy, Mike, he's really living up to expectations. He's having quality games, quality wins for Oklahoma. And, what do you see coming up in this?
I love Trevor Knight. I've been in love with this guy since he defeated the Evil Empire in Alabama last year. I think this guy, he's a great quarterback, and I think a lot of Alabama fans and a lot of people were skeptical just in general, like, okay, anyone can catch lightning in a bottle and beat Alabama in 1 week, but what can you do in a season? Can you put up those gaudy numbers that you put up against Alabama over the course of, a very long college football season? And, Knight is showing that he can. He is living up to the expectations. Everyone had Oklahoma in the top 4 and going into that playoff in the inaugural year. Trevor Knight is doing that right now, and he's putting up great numbers while doing it. Brian, this guy's legit.
He's really hot, and it's coming into the Texas rivalry. Coming up once again, Texas showed a bit of weakness against UCLA. I feel like if they can win this game and if they can win it with authority, that's a huge confidence boost for this Oklahoma team. And not only Trevor Knight, but the whole team can really start getting the spirit of, hey, we got a shot. We could be that Florida State of this year.
And definitely great to see a great quarterback at Alabama, since the years of Sam Bradford. So I'm really stoked, Brian, to see Trevor Knight there. This guy wearing number 7 as a Sooner, going to put up big numbers for this year. in years to come.
Yeah, number 7 probably getting a lot of 7 for University of Oklahoma. But we're going to move back to the SEC from Columbia, Missouri. Mizzou definitely on the rise. They're going quietly, aren't they, Mike?
Very, very, very quietly. You know, they're the Mizzou Tigers, but, you know, the way they're rising, you'd think they were the Mizzou Kittens. You know, this is a team that's been slowly putting together a very good year. 3-0 record, not too shabby at this point in the season. You know, they play in the SEC, very tough conference to play in. They had a good team last year. People were wondering, you know, how can they follow that up this year? They're doing it in a big way. I love the 3-0 right now. You know, this team is not a lot of guys stick out, but, you know, they have a lot of guys. Just a very, very balanced team, Brian.
Yeah, and I feel like there was such a need for increase based on the rise from Mizzou being sort of like a no-name school. I mean, you just wait till basketball season at the University of Missouri, till then becoming a contender for the national championship, almost an SEC champion, by the way of a few points to Auburn. And now, I mean, it's sort of, like we said, it's a ho-hum week. It's a ho-hum year for Mizzou. They haven't really done that much improvement. And granted, they haven't had the schedule where they could, you know, come off first week, beat Alabama, come off second week, beat Texas A&M. But these guys just aren't putting up numbers. You know, they're losing the showcase on ESPN, and it's really interesting to see a team that was so highly held last season just to not really be making that much of a splash.
Yeah, they definitely did fade to black a little bit last year. It was weird, you know, and you would think that going into this year, based on the season they had last year, they were so close to winning the SEC that they would be, you know, a favorite to win the SEC. But they're not. You know, I love the year they're having right now, Brian. With conference play starting up, we're going to see how good they really are. But I think, you know, if you're any team in the SEC, don't mess around with Mizzou because they will beat you.
Yeah, they went from gold last season back to black. They're hopefully going to go back to gold this year. So is the Missouri Tigers. But, Mike, we have to talk about the falling stock, and with that, a little apology.
We apologize to any of the teams last week that we said were going to be a rising stock. You're now a falling stock. Your fruit basket will arrive within the coming days. Our apologies from the view from the U. Brian, elaborate.
All right. Last week, our rising stocks were the University of Southern California and Virginia Tech. Both teams were upset in the last week. USC by Boston College, Virginia Tech by East Carolina. Really a step in the wrong direction after such amazing games by these.
Well, I was raving about USC and Virginia Tech, two great teams, you know, teams that are sleepers in their conference. That was not the case. USC, you know, lost a close one to Boston College, and Virginia Tech lost this week. Brian, we don't want to see that, and we really don't want to be the kiss of death here. You know, we don't want to have a Madden curse or a Sports Illustrated curse going on. I don't want to hear people talking about the view from the U curse on Twitter. Let's not. Let's save that for the video games, ladies and gentlemen. But, you know, these are two teams. It's early enough in the season, though, Brian. They can recover. It's non-conference play. So, you know, if you're USC, look to the next couple weeks, try to win your conference, and then maybe, you know, if a couple things go right, you're looking at a playoff, and you're looking at getting into that playoff.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the first time we've seen a team choke after a win or a couple big wins. I mean, we saw Mizzou last year being number 5 in the nation, then ringing an overtime field goal off the goalpost, and just like that, it's gone. I mean, I feel like that happened to both these teams. They came in with such confidence, such a head of steam that, I mean, Virginia Tech could not score for a very long time against East Carolina. I mean, I was flipping through the channels, watching a few games, and seeing that donut up there on the sort of bottom bar on ESPN, I'm really feeling confused. I mean, you don't see it out of these teams that can. You wouldn't think a team like Virginia Tech can go in and play Ohio State and come out with a victory, and then just be completely blanked by a team like East Carolina, an FCS team.
Exactly, and we also have to move into our next two falling stocks. Excuse me. You know, the state of Georgia, Brian, not in a good way. After Georgia lost a close one to South Carolina, in Georgia Tech, you know, lost another one this week.
Yeah, I mean, I was raving about Hudson Mason earlier in the season. I did not see that special quarterback talent in him out of this game. I mean, he wasn't sort of in the zone. He wasn't on his feet the whole time, and I just feel like that's now going to be one of Georgia's weaknesses. And we know that Todd Gurley is a talented running back, but we've shown that Aaron Murray and Hudson Mason are not the same person, and that's a real point of weakness despite some of the good games that he's had.
Exactly, and you know, we were raving about Georgia earlier. You know, like we saw Todd Gurley playing, like, these guys are going to be a national title contender. That's not the case. You know, they went up against a very good South Carolina team and a very good SEC team, a good football team in general. They weren't able to do it. So, you know, our apologies to the state of Georgia. You know, it was a down week for you guys.
Yeah, and let me talk for a bit about my Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Their defense is in a sorry state. They've had three consecutive games against sub-ACC teams, They had Wofford, they had Tulane, and they had Georgia Southern this week, each time allowing 19, 21, I think like 38 points this last week. And when you're coming into league play, they play Virginia Tech this next week, a massive rivalry game. They're just not going to survive in the ACC.
Oh, you can't survive, giving up points to Georgia Southern. I mean, come on, 38 points to Georgia Southern. You can't do that. It's not something you can do and expect to, be in playoff contention. They look at, you want to talk about wins and losses. Winning is great, but winning by a lot looks even better. And when you barely scratch out a game against Georgia Southern, the playoff committee is they're gonna frown down upon that, Brian.
Yeah. So Mike, we got to move on. We got to talk about Oregon. Marcus Mariota, really looking good, really highly ranked. Give us your thoughts.
I love Marcus Mariota right now, Brian. For me, he is the quarterback to beat in college football. Jameis Winston hasn't been making a ton of headlines this year. I think Mariota's the guy. Plus, whenever Drake is wearing your jersey at a concert, I think you're doing something right, Brian. You definitely got to be a good quarterback and a good player to do that. I think Mariota right now, very underrated, very under the radar because he plays on the West Coast. Definitely having just as good, if not a better season than his counterparts.
Yeah, especially since the fall of USC being the national champions. The Pac-12 really hasn't been the height of college football. You always think, SEC, Florida State won, maybe the ACC. Big Ten is waning, Big 12 is waning, and now you got this guy Marcus Mariota. You got to beat a big, amazing opponent in Michigan State by quite an impressive margin. I mean, these guys are big. This guy's a fantastic quarterback, legitimate Heisman frontrunner, and it's kind of good to see a quarterback at the University of Oregon who can sort of stand alone. He could play at another university and do fine because he doesn't rely on just that Oregon speed, which we all know and love.
Oh yeah, he's not a product of the system at all. Some quarterbacks, like you said, are a product of the system. I might point, at right now it's very premature, but to Johnny Manziel and Kenny Hill, I think those guys are very much looking like they're quarterbacks who, do well in Kevin Sumlin's system. So you don't want to be labeled like that. To go to the next level, you got to be good in every kind of system. But Brian, we are running out of time, so I have to give a quick shout out. I really love this. Jerry Neuheisel steps in, Brett Hundley goes out, beats Texas. Brian, that's a great thing for him and great, especially since his papa was the quarterback at UCLA for a while.
Yeah, it's a Neuheisel legacy. It's good for Jerry, good for Pop, and coming out with a win against a team like Texas, that is stellar, especially for a quarterback like that. I mean, that's sort of been the trend this season. We got Kenny Hill coming out putting up big numbers. We got Neuheisel coming out doing really well against Texas, and I'd say when we may have lost the A.J. McCarrons and Johnny Manziel's, the quarterback market is by no means dead in college football.
Oh no, the future looks bright. Obviously Hundley's going to, go back into the starter's role this week. That elbow injury not going to keep him out for long. But like you said, the future is bright. If you're a college quarterback, a lot of great young quarterbacks out there. You got to talk about Kenny Hill. I can name off a ton, Brian. But if you're a college quarterback, things are looking up.
Yeah. So until next week, I'm Brian Heisenbottle,
and I'm Mike Carlson. We'll see you later, ladies and gentlemen.